Welcome to the Triclinium, a podcast named after a three-sided table used in the Lord's Supper, where you're invited to join the three of us as we think through matters of Christian faith, practice, and community. My name is Eric Burgers, and I'm here with my co-hosts Jacob Hawley and Nate Lead, and today we're going to be discussing two different questions rolled into one. The first would be, where do we go when we die? And the second is, how should we think about the dead as they pass on from this life into the next as Christians? So there's a lot kind of packed into that little thing. Before we get to that, as we always do, Jacob, Nate, how are you guys doing?
Oh man, I was trying to keep it together during that whole thing. We recorded an intro just before this, where Eric broke out into laughter because we were talking about something really stupid. And I almost lost it during the second one.
I could hear the Snickers in the background as I was reading that, but I did it. I got through it. We're good.
A little inside baseball. Like every week we read the intro like it's like a written down thing, and every time I read it, I always fear, like I have this moment of fear when I get to your guys' names that I'm going to forget either my name or your names, or I'm going to mix them up. Like I'm Eric Burgers, and then
dude, literally as I was reading that, I was thinking in my head, I was like, did I say my name is Jacob Hawley in the first one?
Yeah. No, as you were reading it, I was thinking he's gonna say the wrong name.
Yeah, that's so funny. So, anyways, I'm doing good. I just moved, and so I have carpet in my new room, which is great because for recording it's a lot quieter. So yeah, I'm elated.
And
where can people send fan mail, Jacob?
I'm not giving my address, even though it would not matter at all if I gave my address. Literally, no one would send me anything. But yeah,
I was gonna say, and how is Vatican City?
Yeah. We don't talk about that. The Pope's doing great.
You are?
Nate, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm officially 25 now. So my birthday was yesterday.
And it was...
And it was okay.
No, it was not. He told us a story.
It was not.
It was the worst birthday ever.
We're going to air out Nate's dirty laundry for all to hear.
Yeah, we're not going to go into detail. You just had a really rough time, and a big part of it was car repairs.
Yep. Yeah,
which is the worst.
It was cringe, for sure.
Yeah, cringe 25.
So, yeah, but now I'm 25, and just really starting to feel that mid-20 grind right now. So.
Yeah, it's time for you to start taking Xanax. The time has come.
Jeez.
I thought
you're old enough.
I thought you were gonna say like an allergy medicine or like back pain.
Well, that too.
But no, let's go straight into.
Didn't we have a podcast
your pill
on
drawer
drugs?
will just continue to grow. Yeah, that's good. I mean, it's terrible that your birthday was terrible.
Yeah, but you know what? It is what it is. And the day was turned around today, so I'm enjoying the weekend. Got some good time with my wife. Got a nice treatment done. My wife is an esthetician, so she does high-grade skincare treatments, and I got to be her guinea pig today, which was a lot of fun. And now we're here with my two favorite guys talking about death.
Aww. Yeah. Wow, that would put a little real damper.
Care.
Y'all pick the topic, so I'm just going from one bad day into an ugly conversation.
Into contemplating your mortality.
There we go. That's how it should be.
Yeah. Nate, when you got on this FaceTime call. I don't know what's happening to me, guys. I think I'm dying. When you got on this FaceTime call, your face was red, and it looks like it's starting to calm down a little bit, which is good.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, thankfully. Yeah, I got home. Right now, I'm like 3 hours post-treatment, and the heat is starting to subside, which is nice.
Did you rub ice on your face?
It was hot for a while. They have these special masks that make you look like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Perfect.
Person.
Is that the new look?
Is that Jason? Jason Voorhees? I think that's his character's name. I've never seen that movie. I don't do horror movies. I think we talked about that on the
I think we
Halloween
talked
episode.
about that.
Yeah, so everybody already knows.
We
Yeah.
touched on it in the
me and-
Halloween
yeah.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyway, yeah, I got to look like a creepy, maniacal serial killer for a little while, but those masks do a
That's the
great
dream.
job of holding in the heat. So, yeah, just really, having a great time these last 2 days.
I'm so sorry, Nate.
Anyway,
Oh, man.
yeah, what are we talking about, Eric? You start
Yeah,
us off.
yes.
Hang on, Eric. How are you doing? How is the father in the group?
I'm
Yeah.
good. Hopefully Briar's not being picked up by my mic. He's screaming in the background in a joyous way, not
Yeah, yeah.
Dad, why are you ignoring
That's good.
me? Type of way.
Dad's got to do his podcast.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But I'm good. Man, I just do work and school nowadays, so I read pretty much all day today. It felt like, at
Wow.
least. But yeah, I'm good. And well, it's okay because I'm in topics that I'm interested in, so it makes it a lot easier. For me,
That's good.
So, but
That is good.
thank you for asking. I'm good. Nevertheless, we've been rambling on, so let's talk about death, fellas.
Yeah.
That's
It's
what
time to
everybody
talk
is
about
here
death.
for.
One of you said right there. We kind of said it in passing, like a joke, like let's contemplate death. But I do think like everybody should contemplate death, like for sure. I'm not trying to like bring that in as like the main thing to talk about here, but I think it gets the ball rolling a little bit because like we all come to the realization, and it might be like cliche to say this, but like we are all going to die someday. And like when it really like hits you in the moment that like you're going to cease to exist like on the planet Earth someday, like it starts to hit a little different, and you get to thinking not just about yourself but about your family as well and things like that. So but what I just said right there, I think is on the track of the question that we asked in the beginning, because I just said you're going to cease to exist to be on the earth someday, and the question is where do we go when we die? So I'm assuming both of
Yeah.
you would agree that when we die, in some way or another, our soul moves on from the earth. Would you agree with that statement, or would you disagree? Where does your mind go?
Oof. It's so tricky. I think I'm like looking up some passages right now. I would say that yeah, I don't like I don't know that I believe in ghosts in the traditional sense. So like if that's kind of what you're getting at. Though I will say that the summoning of Samuel makes me kind of rethink my position on that.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, like, because if a human spirit can be summoned back from the grave, then that, I don't know, that just opens up the question mark a little bit for
Yeah,
me.
like where was Samuel like before he was summoned? Yeah, that's interesting.
Exactly. I'm trying to find, there's a passage in Revelation that talks about the souls of those who had been slain being basically I'm close. I can smell it. I'm doing research right now. Basically being like beneath the altar in heaven or in wherever God is. And like crying out for justice, and God telling them like, no, like the time is not yet. You have to wait.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, I think there's like, yeah, I think there's a waiting period, or there's a waiting place for those who have died. I also think that like you could say that the souls of those who have died go to be with Christ, and where is Christ? Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father in heaven. So that's kind of my initial answer is, yeah, they go to heaven where Christ is, and they go to be with him.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that passage. I want to say it's like First Corinthians, the one where Paul says, I long to be with Christ, but I'm going to remain here on the earth because my journey is not done here.
Yeah.
If I remember right, like kind of the phrasing in that passage made it seem like Paul was saying, when we die, we're with Christ, whatever that means, in some broad sense. So I'll kind of lay my cards on the table. This is kind of like where I'm coming from at the moment. That is, obviously, I'm open to changing if there's something different to be presented on this topic. I think it's kind of ambiguous a bit in Scripture, but my basic logic of where we go when we die, I would say heaven. And here's kind of my reasoning why. Is one, there's the passage that Paul says where he says, when we die, we're with Christ. Okay. Revelation, I believe it is, I think Hebrews 1 as well, if I remember correctly, says Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father right now. So he dies, he's crucified, resurrects on the third day, ascends into heaven after meeting with the disciples and various people on the earth. And then he's seated at the right hand of the Father. That seems pretty clear to me in Scripture at the moment. And so the question is where's the Father? And my simple answer is the Father is in heaven, like the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. So the logic for me kind of goes is we're with Christ when we die, as Paul says. Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father. The Father is in heaven. So when we die, I think it would make logical sense to say that we go to heaven. So I know there's dissenting voices out there who, Tim Mackey, for example, who runs the Bible Project and does different things. Is he still in Portland? Do you guys know? Yeah, he's still out there in Portland.
Yeah. I think he's at Bridgetown now. Yeah.
I've heard him say some things in the past, kind of objecting to the thought that when we die, we, quote unquote, go to heaven. Jacob, you were saying N.T. Wright says some interesting things about that too. But anyways, that's a long breath for me. But yes, I think it's appropriate to say that when we die, we go to heaven because that's where Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, I think there's a part of me that I don't even know how to frame this. Okay, I'm just going to say I like this. I like this idea that when we die, we are actually joining Christ in his death. And this goes back to that idea of I think that we talked about this in like episode 12 or something, where Christ's humanity is our humanity, just like the first fruits of it, right? So our death is prefigured by his death. Our resurrection is prefigured by his. His death and resurrection come before ours, and signal to us what will come for us. And so I think in a sense, the death that has been like kind of walking in our bodies throughout our lives as disciples, like putting to death the deeds of the flesh, that kind of death, right? That kind of letting go of your life that you may find it kind of death. That death culminates in our actual physical death, and upon that moment, I think that like there's a sense in which we are unified to Christ in his death in time or in actuality. I do like the idea that in some way you could say all of human life is reliving, either in acceptance or in rejection of the story of of Christ's earthly ministry. So like you have Christ's lifetime, and it's almost like all of our lives bend in on his lifetime and repeat these themes and motifs of death and resurrection again and again. So I don't know. That's kind of a hyper spiritualized, almost an allegorical approach. But I think I do think that we go to be with Christ, and I would say that means that we are in heaven. But I also, there's a part of me, the body of Christ is here on earth now. Christ is here with us now. In the same sense that he is also seated at the right hand of the Father. I don't think that he's just locked in. I'm not with Calvin on that one. I don't think that he's just locked in heaven and we have to go up to see him. Like, I think that he is here with us. So I guess the bigger thing for me is that we are with Christ when we die, not that we are in heaven. Like, I think locality is not my big qualm.
Yeah. Yeah, because I was...
Do you think that...
Go ahead, Nate. My apologies.
Sorry, I was just going to make a quick question on that point of Jesus sitting at the right hand of God. Do you guys think that that's more of like a title rather than like a specific locked in location? Like how we would say the guy who sits at the Oval Office.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
We know that's the president, but the president doesn't always, you know, like, it's not sitting at the Oval Office that makes him the president, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know? So would that be more of like a title, you know, like Christ who is seated at the right hand of the Father, but that doesn't mean that he is stuck there, essentially. Is that kind of the logic?
I think most people would say locationally, in some sense, he is like actually seated at the right hand of the Father. It just depends on how you flesh out what that means. And so like if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jacob, but like the Lutherans will say something like, well, you know, Christ in his human nature is seated at the right hand of the Father, but his human nature is ubiquitous, meaning that it can like divine attributes can be communicated to Christ's human nature in a way that he can be omnipresent in his human nature on the earth. So, but nevertheless, that would still mean that he can still be seated at the right hand of the Father because of that ability for his human nature to be ubiquitous. And then, yet, like Jacob kind of touched on, like from Calvin's perspective, is like Christ in his human nature is locationally seated at the right hand of the Father. But what makes the Calvin's view kind of interesting, and the kind of like technical term for it is not term, but the way it's been approached in the past is it's called the Extra Calvinisticum, which is interesting to read about. And basically Calvin will say something like, you know, even though Christ, when he became incarnate on the earth, didn't cease to possess his divine attributes, meaning that even though he was locationally a human being on the earth in a manger, walking around doing ministry, like his divine omnipresence still exists outside of his incarnational body. So, anyways, all of that's interesting and everything. But to get to your question, I think I would want to protect saying that Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father. I'm not sure that that's supposed to be taken like metaphorically in that sense, and I'm not sure many people would like. I just don't see a reason to object that Christ is like actually seated at the right hand of the Father, like the text says.
Yeah.
Let me pose one.
Let me
pose one.
Please do.
Does the Father have a body?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, is like the Father like locationally contained to heaven? Is that what you're...
Yeah. Well, you could even just say, does he have a right side?
Yeah,
because I would say the Cappadocians would definitely not say that.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's uncircumscribed.
I think I would agree, like in some sense, with the Lutherans that text right there is like ascribing a title to Christ, like he's being glorified, I think is how they would probably say it, you know, like it's a title of glory for him.
Yeah,
it has to do, I just got to do more research on the debates between the Reformed and the Lutheran, I think, on that, like because the debate is around Christ and his human nature, like where is Christ human body right now, because it's it's seen by everybody that, you know, just because Christ ascends into heaven, like he doesn't cease to be a human being anymore.
Right.
We would all say, I would hope that Christ is a human being eternally from this point on.
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, I would have to think about it some more. I do think in some sense it's a title, but again, like, I just don't see a reason. I don't see a good enough reason to object to the more wooden, I guess, interpretation of the text that Christ in his human nature is seated at the right hand of the Father.
Yeah,
Sure.
I would say that there's some way in which Christ really is seated at the right hand of the Father, but whether or not that way can be purely analogous or metaphorical, or whether there's like some sort of genuine locality, I think it almost like muddles the question to say, is there locality, because God does not have locality in that sense. So I think it makes it really difficult. I would tend to want to take it as a title, Nate, or as like an analogy. But there's, I'm willing to say there may be more that I'm just unsure of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with both of you guys. There's no reason to not view that image as the truth, or as it may be, how it could be represented in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sorry, I don't know why I'm so hung up on that. It's just powerful imagery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we kind of lose some of that because we're not really in an era of kings
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot. But it's like the king's right hand man, right hand person is vastly important.
Yeah.
So to think that Christ, it just it seats him in his proper place, and
Yeah.
I just love that imagery. So anyway, let's bring it back to death. But I had another question about death, kind of more about the conversation around death, because we were talking about some opposing viewpoints, and I wanted to ask, like, is this conversation, where would you rank this conversation's importance among just theological topics in general? Like, is this an area where, as Christians, we can just explore this area kind of with open minds and be like, what is it? Like, where do we go when we die? Is this a hill to die on, or is this more of like, oh, like Jacob, you were, I wonder if it's like this, or I wonder if our death, intertwines with Christ's death, and how his death is really, the basically the one that matters,
Mhm.
and all of ours kind of feed into that. So, is this conversation one that people should argue about, or is this one that we can just kind of wonder about?
Mm.
I think every theological topic is important, so I don't want to frame it as like it's just an unimportant thing to think about. Like, there's always significance to everything theological, I think, that you're going to come down with. There's always like some, if you take something and then you walk a bit further down the road, like, it can be problematic if you start denying certain things. So like this topic is a perfect example, because if you say, for one, you can't say, like, I found the verse, by the way. It was Philippians 1:23, and Paul said, I'm hard-pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. So you can't say, like, when we die, I think it would be problematic if somebody was like, yeah, when we die, we're not with Christ. Like, that would seem antithetical to what Scripture is saying. So you can't say that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like I was kind of expressing a little bit with debates between the Reformed tradition and the Lutheran tradition, like, if you tease out what it means to die and go be with Christ, it starts, you end up, like, you can possibly end up talking about the very nature of Christ himself, like the specifically his human nature, not one nature, he has two, but either way. So, but
Good boy.
Yeah, good Christology, yay.
Yeah, good Christology. Good Chalcedonian boy.
Anyways, so, like, every theological topic is important, but not every theological topic is equally as important. Especially, and this gets into just the topic of, like, what's called theological triage. And so, like, the way that I've heard and, that I see it right now is there's kind of, like, at the very least, like, three different categories of, like, the ability to rank doctrine on a scale of importance. You have like central doctrines, so that would be things like the Trinity and the deity of Christ or something. You have like secondary, which I think would be matters of like ecclesiology perhaps, and things of that nature. And then you have matters of third importance, which I think would be things like eschatology, like where it's much more unclear and there's room for debate within it. So like if we're using like those categories, all three are important in my view, like I said, because it can be teased out different ways. But I personally would probably put this one just at like face value without getting into some of the deeper, like, you know, Christology and stuff that it could go to. Probably third tier, I would think. I don't know what you think, Jacob.
Yeah. No, thank you for framing it that way. I think you're right in that. And I also just wanted to, I don't know, just qualify this conversation a bit, and also just iterate. I mean, I'm no death expert, but it's a fun conversation to have. And I think, you know, what you said too is like, you know, all these conversations are important, and I agree with that, and I think that's why we're having them, you know, even to begin with and to talk about. So
because whatever you say on any theological topic, it's always going to have further meaning that you're going to have to unpack something further, you know, and you have to be prepared to, you know, defend proper views, I guess. So anyways, I don't know, where would you land, Jacob? Where, like, if you had to sort of triage this topic, how high on the scale or low on the scale would you think this is?
Yeah, I think the deeper importance is what it, like you said earlier, like these things can import directly into Christology if we trace them, right?
Right.
The questions we ask in these areas can then develop how we see other things. So I would just say the biggest importance is making sure that the first things come first, and that they become you could say the river that feeds the stream, right? So like Christology and Trinitarian theology are, you could say, that's the sandbox that we play in.
Yeah.
That's the direction of the rest of our theology. And so if our theology somehow starts to press against Christology and our Trinitarian theology, and to like demand the space that it holds, I would say that, or to like to push against it, I would say that's where we need to be the most careful. So I would just say, if we're properly beginning with, you know, healthy and defined Trinitarian and Christological categories, what I would say, like the things that like this, where it may not be as clear, kind of undergo some defining themselves. They at least get some boundary markers that we can operate between, but then also we have some freedom within those boundaries to kind of see where they lie.
Yeah, maybe to make it a bit more specific, like on the question of where we as human beings personally and locationally go when we die, aside from walking down the path of like Christology as it becomes involved, I would see this as a lower tier doctrine, because at the end of the day, again, I'm going to bring Philippians 1:23 in it. Like Paul seems mostly concerned, like, I want to be with Christ when I die, and he doesn't really seem interested in fleshing that out in that letter, you know.
Right.
So,
right.
As far as like location goes, yeah, I would say it's a lower tiered doctrine. But yeah, is the second you start to, you know, ask other questions off of your answer to that question, it can get a little higher, I would think.
Yeah. I would even go so far as to say there are certain doctrines that require a lack of definition, a genuine silence. And I think this actually might be one of them, because it does seem clear that, like, with Christ is a very defined category, right? where we go is with Christ. And then there's a bunch of other language that points to a bunch of different possibilities of what the rest, like what the other, is it heaven? Is it like what does paradise mean? Like today you will be with me in paradise, because in the Greek I believe that just means like a walled garden. You will be with me in a walled garden, right? It's like, okay, well, what is that? What?
Yeah.
And then like there's the descriptions in the Old Testament of Sheol, and then there's the talk about Lazarus and the rich man and the bosom of Abraham, and you're like, what is going on? Like I don't know what happens when we die.
Yeah.
And I would say they're all true. How they relate, you almost have to pass over in holy silence, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We might we might have to revisit the oh man, is it the Athanasian Creed? He descended into hell, because
yeah.
man, I think we missed some stuff there when I heard some other
Oh, and
things about it.
Apostles' Creed.
Oh, is it the Apostles' Creed? Am I mixing my creeds? Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, isn't it?
They both start with A, so
Yeah.
Next time on Creed Review.
Yeah. Creed reacts.
Creed reacts. Yeah.
Creed reacts. Messed up my own
Anyway.
joke.
Happy birthday, Nate.
Yeah, seriously. Man, this can't get any worse.
I feel so bad.
Yeah.
I just imagine now all my power shutting down, everything
Yeah.
lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, thank you for qualifying that and kind of jumping into that sidebar. I have another question,
Mm-hmm.
more so on topic.
Hmm.
But now, because I think that we answered the first question, so
Yeah.
moving into the second one, how do you guys want to die?
Like, how do I want to die, or how do I want to be buried?
How do you want to die? And then we'll get into how do you want to die.
Oh, golly, that's a
Okay.
deep question.
I
man.
wasn't expecting that. We asked a different question for the second one than that. Yeah.
I know, but this feeds into that
Okay.
one.
Yeah, we'll get there.
This is just a quick introductory. I'll go first. I'm so boring, okay? And I said this once to my friends in like middle school or high school. This is how I knew that I was mature for my age, because I said I just want to die peacefully in my sleep at the end of a long life, surrounded by my family. In a full house full of kids and grandkids, maybe great grandkids, but to be surrounded by the ones that I love, and to just that it's my time to go. That's how I want to go, and I told that to my friends, and they said, "Are you serious? That's so lame. I want to go out when I'm 30. I want to die young. I want to die in a fiery car crash, and that's how I want to go." And I was like, "Man, I need to get some new friends."
Yeah,
That's a
yeah,
garbage
yeah.
response. Yeah. That's a
Jeez.
terrible response.
I know. So they just spit all over my response, and so anyway, I hope you guys didn't want to die at 30 in a
Pass.
fiery car crash. Hopefully
Pass.
not, Eric.
I guess I'm
Yeah.
gonna go
With
ahead
your
and
son.
not answer this question then, Nate.
Yeah,
You're outing
Jacob
me.
has left the chat.
Yeah.
Although it might help my family to collect the insurance money. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We got him.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Yeah.
No, that's a good question. I haven't really put much thought into it, I guess, but honestly, like, I think I always, every time I picture like my death, I just want my wife to be there. That's all I really care about, I think. Sorry, Briar, but of course,
Don't care so much about the
yeah,
boy.
Of course, I would.
Yeah, he's out saving the world probably. So
Well, not to like trail off, but like I think in a healthy family dynamic, I think it's really important to prioritize the love between husband and wife, and that bleeds into your relationship with your children, I think. So
yeah.
That's a topic for another time,
yeah,
Eric.
it is. So that
Don't go
anyways,
there.
So yeah, I think I don't know, something in me just feels like it's really important. Like I want Aaliyah there, like when it's my time to go, and it would make me very sad
Yeah.
if she was not. So.
Yeah, Lauren and I, we always say, we don't talk about it often because we don't like to think about the other
Yeah.
person dying. But so whenever it comes up, or whenever we're watching TV and somebody talks about losing their spouse or whatever, we always just reiterate like, "Yep, we're gonna die together. We're gonna die in the same hospital room or whatever. We're gonna be holding hands and we're gonna go at the same time."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if we have to force it.
Right, I'm gonna put a pillow over her, and the exertion will kill me.
Yeah. Perfect. I'm glad you planned it out.
No, we should probably strike that from.
Yeah. The insurance company's like, what did you just say?
Bro,
Yeah,
our
what?
FBI agents.
This will live
our
forever.
FBI
Yeah,
agents
you're-
are going crazy right now.
Yeah, there's like a string
Yeah,
of
yeah,
four
my
texts.
FBI.
Did you get that? Did you get that?
Did you get that? Write that down. Write that down.
Oh man. Well, yeah. So I think for me, every time I think about my death, I'm not like I don't really care that much about dying. I think the biggest thing for me is I think about like the terrible feeling that comes with sudden deaths. Like, so you find out that somebody like you know what I'm talking about when you like you get a phone call or whatever.
I just had one
and
of those
someone's
not long ago. Yeah,
did you really?
I did. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's like one of the most jarring things to find out that somebody has passed away. And so, like, all of the things that, like, I hope don't happen are things that are sudden for my family and my loved ones in a way that, like, will make them paranoid to continue living, right? Like, this, I don't like that. So I think the thing for me would be, I mean, like, honestly, if it were something that was, you could say, predictable, so that any sour feelings could get sorted out and anything that needed to be said could be said. Like, that's a big deal. And, like, I hate the idea of, like, cancer or any of those, like, really slow diseases that kill you. Like, that really freaks me out. But I think I would rather do that than just have some, like, be out in some instant and then have all my family have to deal with that. That sudden.
Even
Like a car crash.
Right.
I know.
yeah, that's not even. Oh man, this is gonna sound really downer, but I'm gonna say it. But it's not even like
Okay.
guaranteed either. Like even if you have something like cancer and it's slow and drawn out, that everything just gets like resolved before you die either.
No, certainly not. But it at least gives you some forewarning. So if you're intentional about it,
Correct.
you can make some last minute resolutions. So yeah.
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 So anyway.
Hey, did you answer the question? Yeah. Well, you kind of did. Yeah. You
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
started it off.
Yeah.
So yeah. So now that we got that out of the way,
Yeah.
and now the whole world knows.
Now that I'm wiping my eyes.
our preference. For how we go. Yeah. Let's talk about like how should we honor how should we bury the dead and honor the dead,
Ooh.
which kind of gets into the topic of like ancestral veneration.
Yeah. I
Which
almost
is very popular in a lot of cultures.
I almost think there's another question that needs to be asked that coincides really close with this, which is, in what sense can we say that people are with us when they die? Like, people will say, like, well, my grandma died, but I know she's with me.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what does that mean? And, like, what do we mean when we say that? And is that can we actually bank on that?
Yeah.
So that's another question.
Yeah, I have a personal testimony to that one. I'm debating if I should say it. I'll try to be as ambiguous as possible, but
Okay.
yeah, when my grandmother died, oh man, how long was this now? Yeah, this was a number of years ago now that I think about it. But anyways, at her funeral, I think like I forget exactly what happened, but there was like somebody in my family was like standing there. I think it might have been one of my young cousins or something, and they were standing there like talking to my grandma's grave, like they were having a conversation with her or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think I just offhand, like I said to Aaliyah, I think as we were like walking back to the car or whatever, I just said, I'm not sure as Christians like we should be doing that, like I don't think we should be talking to the dead like that. And somebody heard me, I'll be ambiguous about who it was, but somebody heard me and was like, if I want to talk to my grandma when she's dead, I'll do it anyways. And like just know, like, I didn't intend for that person to hear what I had said. Obviously it's an emotional moment, and I'm not trying to like poo-poo my own grandmother's death or anything. I'm just trying to
Right.
respect a principle that, I think popped up in that situation. But nevertheless, the moral of why I'm bringing it up is, it's very personal for some people. Like, they have very personal interactions with lost family members or loved ones, where it's probably, I would go as far to say it's pretty common that people just speak with dead family members or loved ones, perhaps even on a daily basis. And to me, I don't know about you guys, I think scripture is pretty clear, like, we should not speak to the dead. And I know that bumps up into, it's going to get into like, more like Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox type beliefs, because they'll go as far to say as you can pray to the dead in some sense. And their objection is going to be something like, well, if they were Christians, like, and they are now the church the church militant, then it is the church militant, right? I didn't mix those two, did I?
I think the church militant is like those who are currently alive.
Okay, I probably mixed
Let me
those
Google
two.
it.
My bad. Anyways, the point is we don't want to say that those who have died are dead, right? If they were repentant and trusted in Christ, they're living, they're alive, they're with Christ. And their objection is going to be something like, when we say that we can't pray to the dead or talk with the dead, is we're denigrating the fact that Christ has raised them, or not raised them, but they're with Christ at the moment of their death, and they're not actually like ceasing to exist in the fullest sense of that meaning. So I've been talking for a while, so I'll shut up, but essentially, like, it rubs me the wrong way, because I think you're going to run into a number of red flags for me to say that we can talk to the dead, and I'll leave it there and hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, Jacob, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so, let me pull this into a different translation, because I'm looking up a passage right now. This one comes to mind. It says, Jesus said to them, "The sons of this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy to attain to that age and to the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. For they cannot die anymore, because they are equal to angels and are sons of God, being sons of the resurrection. But that the dead are raised, even Moses showed in the passage about the bush, where he called the Lord the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
Yes.
Now he is not the God of the dead, but of the living,
Yes.
for all live to him." Then some of the scribes answered, "Teacher, you have spoken well." So, there's a part of me that's weirded out by that, because he says that Moses is calling Abraham and calling God the Abraham. I'm sorry, calling God the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then saying that these are not, like, God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. So almost inferring that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in some way are alive to God. And I would say if people are alive to God, even after they've died to the flesh, then they are genuinely alive. Like,
Right.
that there is very little sense in which they are actually dead.
Right.
And so I don't know. I think the weirdness of people talking with their dead ancestors or like family members or loved ones is not so much like the idea of whether or not they're dead or alive, but whether or not they are accessible.
Yes.
Right? That's the question. I think that needs to be answered.
Yeah.
And if we have the rich man and Lazarus. I had it pulled up because I was going to talk about it for where we go when we die. But I think this is another part of this. Is he says he answered, "Then I beg you, Father, send Lazarus to my family." So this is the rich man after he's been in suffering in the fire. "For I have 5 brothers. Let him warn them, so they will not also come to this place of torment." And Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them." And he basically says, like, no, they need someone from the dead. And Abraham says, if they do not listen to the Moses and the prophets, they will not be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead. But I think the kind of inference there is that there is no going back from the dead. There is no like going back to people. Though then you could also say like there's that weird line at the end of Matthew's gospel where the Christ dies and then a bunch of the dead like raise from their tombs and go around wandering, showing themselves. So I don't know. I guess I'm unconvinced that the dead can be accessed.
Yeah, me too.
But I think that what's happening when people say they are talking to the dead, like it can be easily recategorized and the same effect can be maintained, which is it's like it would be the same as like writing an argument with Socrates, right? Like I'm not actually arguing with Socrates, and I know that because Socrates is dead.
Yes.
But there is a legacy that Socrates left to us in his writings and in those who remember him.
Yes.
That can be, in a sense, like a placeholder for his voice. Yeah. So I think when people are talking to the dead, they're talking to the remembrance of the types of things, the types of person.
Yeah.
Or the type of person that their loved one was before they passed away.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, I would say you can talk to the dead, but you don't talk to them through their death. You talk to them as they were when they were alive.
Yeah. So you would say something like we don't have a direct line of communication to the dead in their eternal state, whatever that means.
Right
now. Yeah, I would agree. I still am unconvinced that we have that ability. I'm not convinced that the saints in heaven can hear us. Okay,
yeah.
And I've heard a number of scriptural arguments that Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox will make to try to establish that case. I think it's pretty weak. They'll use that passage that you just used with the rich man and Lazarus. But I think there's all sorts of problems with using that as a proof text for prayers to the dead or invocation of the saints, however you want to put it. I've seen Revelation 5 too. I think there's problems in using Revelation to establish that type of doctrine as well. And I don't think that passage, I'm not going to go into it right now. I don't think that passage gives warrant for an invocation of the saints either who are in heaven. So... Yeah, scripturally speaking,
me neither.
It doesn't appear to me that we should be attempting communication with those who have passed on and are with Christ. Every time, scripturally speaking, that it seems there's an interaction between those who have passed on and those who are on earth, it seems as though they're praying for us down here in a downwards direction, not us up to them in an upwards direction. And so... yeah, and then just, kind of on an anecdotal note as well, still for me, seeing things like people, even if you just watch a movie or something, people who are having, full-blown conversations like they're talking to somebody who is not there and who is dead, concerns me. It really, I think one of the strongest arguments against prayers to the saints, invocation of the saints, however you want to say it, is it just appears to me like you're denigrating the mediatorship of Christ between humanity and God when you do that. If Christ is the mediator and you are seeking to, communicate with somebody who has passed on, that they might communicate to God on your behalf or to Christ on your behalf, I can't get over that seems to denigrate Christ's ability to intercede for you to God the Father, and so that's kind of where I come from on this topic. So that's kind of my negative case on how we don't honor the dead, and we'll get to the bury part here probably in a minute.
But could you say, Eric?
Yeah, go ahead.
And Nate, also, I would love to hear your thoughts on this too. Could you say that the dead are with us in some way? Is there some way in which we carry the dead or the dead follow us?
Yeah, I think in some really vague sense, it could be appropriate to say that. I think it seems pretty clear in Revelation that there are saints who, in some, it's really ambiguous in what way they know what's going on Earth, but in some sense, they're aware of particular events that happen on the Earth. Whether or not that's daily, minute-by-minute events, like they're watching you or watching us right now, is very unclear to me from a scriptural standpoint.
Yeah.
But in some sense, there's passages in Revelation that say, like, X event happened and the saints were praying for, asking God, interceding on our behalf to God or whatever. I should just find the passage, but anyways, in some broad sense, I think that's probably appropriate. But when you get into some details, I think problems will start to arise.
Yeah, I would say, I would ask if that question is meant literally, like we literally carry around the dead, or the dead are with us physically, literally. I would probably say no.
Yeah.
But intellectually, figuratively, I would say absolutely.
So let me pose it to you this way then, to both of you, and that way, Jacob, you can give an answer to that question too. When somebody says something like, an event happens, and somebody is like, man, I just really feel my grandma's presence right now, or I just really feel my dad's presence with me right now, even though they're dead, what would your response to that be?
I've had loved ones speak this way to me.
Yeah.
I think that I could make a theological case that in spirit they are with us. And I think it's because for those who are in Christ. I think if you're not in Christ, it's a harder case to make. But I would say, if you're in Christ, then we all, whether or not they're dead or alive in the body, they are alive in the spirit. And the spirit is, I would say there's one spirit. So I would say the presence is there. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's discernible, though. And so that's where I would push back, is I would say, I don't know that you can feel that your grandma's with you, or you can feel that your dad is with you. But I think that they are with you in a sense. In spirit, I would say.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that as well. Granted that I'm not trying to argue in the moment of somebody who's,
No.
had a loved one pass.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make that argument with them in that moment when they're distraught.
Not pastoral.
No, that's not very pastoral. and I want to reiterate that as well, just for anybody who's trying to think, or anybody who would say that we're just trying to beat people over the head with the Bible and trying to get everybody to think the right things. It's like, obviously, we would never say that to somebody in the moment. Yeah. Well, to wrap up this conversation, maybe while Eric finds this scripture, Jacob, I'll ask you, how do you want to be buried, and are there any wrong answers?
Yeah. I would say there are no wrong answers, but I would say that it's important to maintain that we that we're being respectful and reverent, like, because it's still acting upon, you could say, the symbol of someone's being when you bury them, right? It's the way that they were present to us, their body, and so like things where like bodies are desecrated, like I don't think Christians should ever be okay with that. And what I mean by that is like where the cultural symbols are being used to bring shame onto a person by their burial, right? So hanging them in the streets and having people spit on their bodies, that kind of crap, that's not okay for Christians, I don't think. Yeah, that, like, I don't think there's any, like, I think it's a direct, it's a direct representation of your either your respect or your disdain for an individual, the way that you bury them. So that needs to be taken into account.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that. Much like in the way that, like in the conversation on animals, like how somebody treats an animal
Yes.
says a lot
Yep.
about them and their spirit.
Great analogy. Yep. Very similar.
Yeah, I think the way that people treat their dead goes a long way to talk about them and their heart and how they view either the person or people in general, and the body.
Yeah. And like I would even go so far as to say for animals, like the way that you treat the animal of a body or the body of an animal is important. Like
Yeah.
like if you're, I don't know, like I've seen people like taxidermy animals and then like make them into funny things. That strikes me as a little weird. Like, you know, it's because it's the way that this living being had presence in the world, and you're almost, it's almost like a way of laughing at their death. And I think that's a, you know, like there was one time I burned a spider. Like I saw a spider and I took a blowtorch and I burned it, and I immediately afterwards felt like I was a bad person move. I don't know why I did that. Right? That it's that kind of thing. It's like that was cruel. It was unnecessary. It didn't need to happen. And you know, kill a spider, whatever. But like burning it, like that's a bit much. I don't know why I felt the need to do that. So
Just to restate the question is like how do we honor the dead, or what's
sorry.
Yeah, Jacob really skirted around the how does he want to be.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. So
you were kind of just saying those some kind of negative things that you don't think Christians should engage in when it comes to burying the dead.
Yeah. I think for me, there's this line. I know this is like contradictory to what I just said, but there's this line from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Danny DeVito's character is you probably have heard this before. He's like, when I'm dead, just throw me in the trash, throw my body in the trash, and that comes to mind every time someone asks me like, you know, how do you want to be buried, or you know, what do you want us to do with you when you die? When I'm dead, just throw me in the trash. That's very funny, but I think I don't really care. Like you know, it's not up to me. I think the reason that we bury is less for the person that's being buried and more for the people that are burying.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's been I wish I could remember who. It might have been Spurgeon. No, maybe it's not Spurgeon. It's somebody. But there's been a number of Christian figures in the past who intentionally have their bodies buried but their graves unmarked, or just buried in maybe they have a tombstone but there's no name on it or something like that. And their reasoning is usually something along the lines of like I think somebody did have a tombstone. It might have been one of the Wesleys who it said something along the lines of like I want nobody to remember my name, nobody to remember me, only to remember Christ. And you know, like in some sense, I think there's like some nobility to that kind of sentiment. So like I get it, but yeah, I think what Jacob said is a bit stronger. I think you know, Christ's name is still going to be glorified whether you have a name on your grave or not.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it has much more to do with those who have lost you, and it seems a little bit sad to me, like that those people, their families have no clue where they are, like they can't pay their respects once they've passed on.
Yeah. If my grave is unmarked, how will people come and talk with me? You know what I mean?
In spirit, bro.
Yeah, in spirit.
Yeah. The passage, by the way,
you know,
real quick, since
go ahead.
I think the passage is just Revelation 5. Basically, it's describing like events that the Lamb, who is Christ, does on earth, and then like it says like the saints in heaven prayed when he did this, and then everybody in heaven and on earth prayed when this happened. And so it seems like you can draw from that in some sense. The saints in heaven are aware of what's going on, but Sorry, Nate, go ahead.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I was just gonna say that, as we were having this conversation, I was realizing more and more just what a privilege it is to be able to plan your own burial.
Yes.
So many people, just like you said earlier, Jacob, they're gone in an instant. They don't get a choice in the way that they go or how their body ends up. Whether that's a car crash or they're murdered or they're a victim of war, or whatever it may be. Like all the tragedies that can happen. It is a real privilege to be able to decide your own burial.
Yeah.
So not something that we should take for granted. In fact, it should be something that is more stirring and is a reminder of our mortality and that we only get one life. I feel like we love to remember that, but then we use that to justify irrational behavior.
Yeah.
In the now, because YOLO
Right.
was a very common phrase. So it's like, I'm going to do this because I only get one life.
YOLO
But it's
usually
like,
means I'm about to do something really stupid next.
Yeah. That might kill me.
Exactly. Right. But that phrase, and the reminder of our death should be it should be a reminder to live life to the fullest now, and to remember why we live life, ultimately to glorify God.
Yeah, I think that the hope in all of this. This is kind of a dreary topic, but I think the hope in all of this is that actually all the things that we do to remember the dead, to bury the dead, they're all they're all ceremonies and they're trinkets that we carry on with us, like somebody who's gone overseas and is waiting to see their loved ones again once they come back. But there will be a coming back for us. Like we know that we will meet again in the resurrection, and so I think to some degree that adds a positive note to all these things, and almost in a way trivializes them because the resurrection is coming. All of these things are a pause, not a stop. So.
Yeah, we might have to do a part 2 on this one because I'm saying.
Oh, not a part 2.
Well, what you said raised an important question in my mind. Is like,
are the dead raised?
No, not are the dead raised, but
thank God.
More so,
because that's in the creeds.
No. More so, like I'm just thinking about people who lose loved ones, and I'm thinking about not everybody we're probably going to see on the other side of heaven. So, one, like, how do we deal with people who have lost somebody? What's like the appropriate way to deal with loss? And especially, how do you deal with loss of somebody you may know and care about, and was not a believer, and you're talking to people regarding about that person?
Yeah, that would be a good question to discuss at some point.
That is
that
a good
I
question.
think is an episode in and of itself and needs some care.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do a part 2.
I
But
can
I don't
tell
like
it'll be a good episode because I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, but
That's good.
yeah, I mean, I think that just, I don't want to drag us too much longer, but like one important point there regarding like burial and honoring the dead. I think Jacob's point, and Nate, I might have missed your point in there as well. My bad. I was trying vigorously to find that passage.
Don't worry about it. You can just re-listen to the episode.
I will. We should not dishonor people's bodies when they die. I think the way to honor them is to give them proper burial, or to honor, I think, commands that they might have left behind that are, within the realm of our conscience to do. So, like, if if somebody leaves some instruction and they're like, present my ashes on an altar to Satan or something like that. Like I would expect, I would expect you
You're like, gosh dang it! Now I have to go build an altar to Satan.
So,
There goes my Saturday.
As a Christian, like here, yeah, don't do that. But
Thanks, Uncle Aaron.
yeah, that's like one way I think you can honor the dead is respect their wishes and
Yeah,
respect their will, even that they probably left behind.
yeah,
And the other part that I was going to mention there, because both of you were kind of talking about like how you would kind of want it to look when you're being buried or when you die. There is something I think powerful that every believer can leave behind when they die is a well-crafted funeral, I think. Like,
wow, that's a good point.
I think people should put thought into, and it's tough because it's like all of us are very young, you guys, I think both of you are 25 and I'm 24 myself. Like, I'm not thinking I'm going to die tomorrow, so I'm not like planning my funeral right now.
Got at least till next Thursday.
But like, in some sense, like, should we think about those things? Because it's like you can craft together and make sure that a faithful message or a sermon or something is going to be preached at your funeral, and somebody in the experience of loss and emotion might hear that and come to faith. Like, that's no little thing. You can have hymns and music that honor Christ that really might move somebody a step closer to him, if not all the way, like within your funeral. Like, there's so many of those little tiny elements that you can construct personally and leave instructions behind for people to do that to glorify Christ in your death. And so
I would even say beyond that, there are tangible things that you can do in your life that will create that that legacy that can go on to influence others. So things like journaling are really important.
I think about
even
that
if
one
even
often,
if no one
yeah.
reads it. Even if no one reads it, I think journaling is a great practice in and of itself. But I think even more if there's an access point for those who love you to kind of remember and to even maybe learn some things about you that they never knew through your journals. Things like note-taking in a Bible or note-taking in your books. But I think maybe the most important thing is love well while you're here. Like, sacrifice, surrender yourself to the people, give them the time and be patient with them, be gracious, generous. And I think those things will pay huge dividends towards, like when they have to come to remember you at your funeral, at your memorial, whatever, your celebration of life, as we like to call it now. I think those things will come to roost when you come home to roost when you finally do pass.
Yeah, and to bring the thing this whole thing kind of full circle, like those things that you just mentioned and that I was kind of touching on too, get neglected when we don't think about our death, when we take the life for granted,
Right.
It's much easier to just be focused on whatever you're doing at the moment and forget about the people that are around you and not love well when you're zeroed in on your personal experiences, But when we think about death, there's something inherent about it that gets you thinking about other people as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. Well, shall I wrap us up?
I think we're
Let's
good.
do it.
Nate, any last thoughts?
Nate, how do you want to be buried?
Yeah.
I want to be. I was just about to say that actually. Yeah, there's two ways I think, and I don't know. Quick story, but when my grandpa passed and my uncle passed, we did a joint funeral because their deaths were kind of in the same in a close time period, at least the time period of their funerals, and I was doing the eulogy, and I almost had a panic attack when they brought in the urns with their ashes, because that was like the first time I'd actually that the reality of like my grandpa and my uncle, their physical bodies are no more. This
I
is
had
what
a similar
remains.
experience
So
with my grandma.
Yeah, it was a jarring thing to think about, and so I don't know. I think that for me personally, I'd probably go a bit more of the hippie route. I'd probably want to be turned into a tree or into a piece of coral or something. I don't know. I don't know why, but that appeals to me more than being turned into ashes.
Viking burial.
Have a big burn me up. Yeah. Yup. Or
Crazy.
it'll be whatever Lauren wants if I go first. So
Yeah. Yeah.
well, whatever will console her best. So, but yeah, I was thinking about what you said, Jacob, and I was like, I just imagine your family has a celebration of life, and at the end they dump your body into the trash can, and the garbage truck comes and picks up the trash and puts it in the back, and everybody waves to the trash driver as he drives your
I
body
think
away.
Nate just planned my funeral.
It's one of those trash compacting garbage trucks, too. They're seeing it get crushed as it drives away. Oh, I'm terrible.
Oh no. Oh no. They're like kids, look away. Kids, stop looking.
His leg.
No, look away.
My funeral will not be family friendly. All right. Well, that's terrible. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Triclinium. So excited to be back recording with you guys, and if you'd like to reach out to us, you can comment on this episode, suggest other topics, present any questions you might have. You can reach out to us at sophomorosofficial@gmail.com. That's SOPHOMOROS official@gmail.com. And as always, may Christ be exalted.